Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not now is a good time to purchase a car. Before we get into this video though, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. Let's get into it. So there have been quite a few changes in the car market this year, and so I think it's now time to talk about what market conditions are like today. Like, is now actually a good time to buy a car, or should you continue to wait before you purchase a car? And so let's quickly dive into some of the market conditions, and then let's try to answer that question as best as we can. So the first market condition that's changed quite a bit this year is interest rates. Now, the reason why interest rates are important is most people purchasing a new car are going to finance that purchase, and about half of the people that are purchasing a used car are going to finance that purchase. So with interest rates increasing, this obviously decreases affordability for most people with new cars and a lot of people with used cars. And so that is definitely a dynamic to consider if you are considering whether or not right now is a good time to buy a car. Because although there are bigger discounts, and we'll talk about those a little bit later in the video, to be had on cars, there's also more money to be spent on the lending side of things. And so you might be saving $1 over here to spend an extra $10 over there because of the higher interest. And so an exercise that I would do is I would go and take the current price that you can purchase a car at today and today's interest rate and compare that to the potentially higher price you would have paid for that same car maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, when prices were a lot higher, and also use, the interest rate back then. And what you might find is, although you would have paid more money up front on the car, the amount that you pay in interest today might lead to you paying more money over the course of the loan. I think that's always something to do, and it gives you kind of perspective on how much money you're actually spending. And that's something that you should just do in general, right? Before you buy a car, if you're going to finance it, see how much you will pay in interest if you make every single payment and if you don't make any sort of prepayments whatsoever, and see how much interest that adds up to, so you know the total cost into the vehicle rather than, the quote-unquote out-the-door price that obviously doesn't include interest added to it. So that's definitely something to take into account. Now, the next thing is going to be discounts and vehicle availability. So when it comes to discounts, we actually have the biggest discounts than we have seen over the course of the last 2 years. I mean, we're getting to pre-pandemic levels of discounts on vehicles, which I think is quite impressive. And so that makes things look really good. But something to remember is we're also still at the height, the peak of car prices. And when I say we're at the peak, obviously we're not technically at the peak of the peak, right? Look at it kind of like a mountain range where you've got like a really high peak, and that's what we're at last year. And we're still in the same mountain range where the peak we're at is, although lower than the highest peak, it's still a peak in itself. Hopefully you get what I'm saying. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, although the discounts are really big, again, you look at the total purchase price and it's going to be substantially more today than what you would have spent a few years ago. And so again, that's definitely something to consider. Now, obviously moving forward, are the prices going to go lower or going to go higher? And judging by what's happened in the market so far, they're not going to just blow up exponentially. But at the same time, the market's not really showing a massive pullback when it comes to purchases. And so the general trend moving forward is probably going to be price stability with some small increases moving forward. So things aren't really going to get any more affordable than they are today. You might see some really big discounts, or bigger discounts rather, on certain vehicles that are just not in demand, but that's going to be on a case-by-case basis rather than the whole market. Now, when it comes to availability, with used cars, it sucks. With new cars, it's actually really good. Not only is pretty much every new car available, like make, model, all that kind of stuff. There are certain packages that are still hard to get in today's market, but pretty much everything's available. There's also a thing where dealers are obviously competing for business again. And so you have this situation in the new car market where it's relatively easy to find what you want, and it's relatively easy to kind of, pit a couple dealers against each other to earn your business, because they both realize that they both have what you want. It's not a situation where, what we saw a couple years ago where only one dealer had what you want. Lots of dealers have what you want, so they're more willing to work for you. So when it comes to used car availability, it stinks. New car availability, it's a lot better. So putting this all together, is now a good time to buy a car? And here's kind of the, standpoint that I have right now. If it comes to a used car that you're looking at purchasing, I would say that, now is not the worst time to buy a used car, but it's not necessarily a time where you're like, just want to jump in. I would definitely take your time if you are looking at purchasing a used car, because, between the interest rates and also the lack of availability, I think that you could potentially just find something that would fit better for your circumstances down the road. And especially if you're going to be paying rather a much higher interest rate on that car, I think that it would be best to just, be patient with the purchase. Now, when it comes to new cars, I think now could be a really good time to buy a new car, especially a 2023 model year car, potentially even a 2022. There's some dealers that still have 2022s on their lot, because there are some really big discounts to be had. Now, again, like I said earlier in the video, we're still really high when it comes to pricing because of all the price increases. But judging by what's happened in the new car market, it doesn't look like prices are going to go any lower. And so right now is a time where you could get a really big discount. And if you happen to have the means to pay cash, well, you completely avoid the higher interest rates. And so I think for a cash buyer that's looking to buy a new car, I'm not saying that now is the best time ever, but it's actually a pretty good time to purchase a car, because there's a few cars that are still having markups on them, but pretty much on everything either has a discount or it's not being marked up in today's market. And so, I mean, it's a better time than it's been over the course of the last couple of years. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you think it's a good time to buy or not, or let me know if you think that, sometime in the future is going to be a little bit better. We'll see you.